Okay, looks like it's time, so we'll get started here. Welcome to our webinar today titled Laserfiche Business Process Library, Jumpstart Business Process Automation. Thank you for joining us. My name is Brandon Buckwich. I'm a technical marketing engineer here at Laserfiche and the project manager of the Business Process Library team. Also co-hosting our presentation today is the very knowledgeable Katie Fries, pre-sales consultant here. We're both really excited to present today. 2016 has already brought a number of really exciting developments this year. Of course, the Business Process Library being among them. So the Business Process Library, or BPL for short, it is a collection of pre-built turnkey business process solutions that was part of our Laserfiche 10.1 update back in April. And since this was such an important release this year, we really wanted to dedicate a whole webinar session on this to really showcase more of the BPL in detail and the value it can bring our customers. And as we're presenting today, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat window here as well in our WebEx, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can here at the end. Now, to give a quick walkthrough of what we'll be highlighting today in this webinar, first, to set the stage and put things in context, let's just first discuss business process automation in your organization in general and some challenges that your teams may be facing or have experienced before. Then we'll go into how the BPL may mitigate some of those challenges, and I'll provide more of an overview on the BPL in more detail as well. What it is exactly, what's included in our pre-built solutions, and how to access this. We'll also be going to a demonstration on the Business Process Library itself, and Katie will be presenting this portion of the presentation. She'll be choosing a process and highlighting a few easy configuration steps you can take to modify your process for quick deployment. And lastly, we'll provide a summary of what was discussed and share some resources we have available on the BPL. Before we go into the BPL specifics here, let's just take a step back and just start off with considering what business processes you have in your organization in general. And of course, a business process is just essentially a series of tasks necessary to achieve some sort of business goal. And obviously, processes can vary widely from complexity. Some processes will be long, other processes will be short. Some processes will just be more amenable for automation than others. But here, just to list a few common general processes, for examples that likely many businesses, organizations have. If you're listening in, I'm sure you're employed, so you've probably been through some kind of onboarding process that HR would facilitate. Or as another common example of a business process here, a lot of organizations have travel and expense requests. So likely if you've been to our annual conference in Power, you've probably had to fill one of these out for your organization, maybe even on a Laserfiche form. Or also, say you have recently changed roles and you need access to new software. You might have a process in place to request IT to set this up for you. Now, these are, again, just general examples of processes that can be relevant in a variety of different industry fields, but certainly there's a lot of industry-specific processes to consider as well. Maybe you're in the government sector and have a public records request process in place, or you're in the higher education field and have a process in place for students to request diplomas. Or maybe you're in the financial services industry, and whenever you onboard new clients, maybe you have a particular new account opening process in place as well. So here, as you're thinking about your own organization's processes, the point is, no matter what industry or department you're in, there are likely processes that are performed every day that can involve maybe a lot of paper documents, process participants, approval stages, and how your organization manages these processes can a lot of times influence the success of your business. Now, since we're all Laserfiche users here, and I know we're all savvy and know that automating business processes is a key strategy to improve how these processes automate, I'm sure many of those in the audience here have already automated some of these processes I mentioned here as well. So while achieving automation can provide a number of process improvements and efficiencies, there could also potentially be maybe some challenges, some obstacles that first may need to be overcome. So let's take a look at some of those now, and maybe some of these points will sound familiar to you. So on the slide here, I'll just be posing a few rhetorical questions, and maybe some of these will be relevant in your own organization. So as we were researching and speaking to a lot of customers and BPL users, we're finding that organizations oftentimes don't have enough resources to build out new processes completely from scratch. While you might have a number of great ideas and processes you'd like to see automated, the appropriate department members are maybe caught up in another high-priority project for another department, or maybe an organization just doesn't have its own dedicated IT team or resources in the first place. Then again, even if the resources are available, sometimes the challenge can be figuring out where to exactly start in automating a process. Everyone could have their own input, their own method or preference. It might just be hard to get the process mapping down in the first place. Or another common one here could be that the initial development effort of automating a process can be a time-consuming effort. Getting the right people involved, getting the process diagram down. You've invested in a business process automation technology, and of course you'll want to be able to apply it as soon as possible. Now, the Laserfiche Business Process Library is a solution that can really address these kinds of concerns and mitigate these kinds of challenges. Even if you don't have the resources immediately available, you don't need to necessarily start from scratch. You have a place to start, and the processes are all easily configurable to help save you time and at least have an initial foundation. So let me dive more into what the BPL is exactly more now. So as I mentioned before, the Business Process Library provides a broad collection of pre-packaged business processes, and it's only going to be continuing to grow from here. These processes are out of the box, and they span across a variety of different markets. So we have categories from specific horizontals, such as human resources, information technology, accounting and finance, so on, as well as specific vertical categories as well, government, higher education. And really a main advantage that the BPL provides, again, is that users don't need to start from scratch. A lot of the work has already been set up for you. You'll have a generic process flow to start from, which you can then easily configure and extend for your own internal process needs. So you'll have a jump start, can accelerate the initial development effort, and you really have something concrete and to begin with and extend for your own, concrete to begin with to base your conversations off of as you build out your own solution. So if you're just starting out with Laserfiche, there might be a couple high priority processes or problems you're trying to solve initially with Laserfiche automation software. We have process templates for those, and once those have been implemented in your organization, you can come back to the BPL for other ideas and solutions to expand even further in your organization. The really convenient aspect of the BPL here as well is that this library is integrated into our Laserfiche Forms product. So any organization that has the latest version of Laserfiche Forms, we're on 10.1 right now, is able to access the Business Process Library. There's also no additional licensing fee we charge here as well. But please note here, for more advanced configuration work, you may want to check with your VARs for more pricing and support options. But also super convenient, so whenever we add a new process or make an update to an existing process, these changes will be automatically available to our users. You don't need to worry about getting the most up-to-date list. There's no separate update tasks you need to perform. You'll already be looking at the most current BPL view. Yesterday, I just actually submitted 2 new processes to the library. They're 2 government processes, agenda item submission process and a special events application process. They're already available in the library for users to take advantage of. Also, really importantly here, a number of these processes have also been inspired and validated by conversations we've had with members from our Laserfiche community. So while internally involved here, we have a very strong cross-functional team, comprises experts across the company building these processes out. We put in a lot of effort here as well to incorporate input directly from experts in the community that work with these processes every day themselves. So we've definitely appreciated the time and feedback shared for us to build these quality processes for everyone. And I believe some of you who we reached out to may be on the line right now as well. So now that we've gone over what the BPL is, let's get more into more of the specifics here. When we say pre-built or pre-packaged, what does that actually mean? What are we providing here? So as part of a template, we provide a number of components for users to have a pretty solid foundation in deploying these business processes, and I'll go over them here in the next few slides. And I'll start off with the Laserfiche repository briefcase. So for those familiar with Laserfiche, you know your Laserfiche repository is basically like your digital filing cabinet. What the briefcase file provides you with is a preset folder from our repository that you can easily import into yours. It has a set folder path, sample documents, metadata that will be set as default. So you already have some examples of what documents generated from the process will look like. And of course, this will be all easy to edit and configure as necessary for your own internal use. Now, for the really key components of our templates, these processes also come with pre-built forms and process diagrams. So a lot of these processes are initiated with an initial form. These forms are used to collect information required to initiate the process, and there may also be other forms involved later on in the process to collect more information, depending on what process participant it's been assigned to. And if users want to edit the fields we set up on the forms, these can be easily modified. You want to take out a field, add a new field. It's all pretty easy to do. Katie Freeze will be showing this here more momentarily. And we also provide the mapped out process diagram, which is a process flow structure that enforces the review and approval tasks to bring the process to completion. So again, this is also very easy to configure and amend as necessary to meet more of what your specific organization may require, such as adding new tasks here or what the email messages need to say. Now for more complex activities that require more specific manipulation of the underlying repository structure, maybe some metadata information needs to be updated to monitor status, or you want to perform a search in the repository. For these kind of activities, some processes will also include Laserfiche workflow files. So by combining our very user-friendly Laserfiche Forms interface with these lower-level workflow rules, we really have a lot of flexibility to build out a number of really cool process templates. So we actually featured one of these more complex processes a couple weeks ago in a webinar held by another colleague of ours, and that webinar focused on contract management. We're working on having this contract management process to be live in the library soon, but please, for the meantime, please check out that webinar recording if you're curious on how to automate contract management in general, and see how one of our more complex template processes can look like. Now lastly here, to help explain what the business process the template will involve, our processes all have a details page which explains what the process flow is, who the process participants are, what the default folder structure is, so on. Katie will show a little bit more on this later as well. Also, the process diagrams and workflows themselves as well also include annotations to help explain certain steps or suggestions for configuration and expansion. And for our more complex processes like the contract management process I just mentioned, they'll also come with documentation written up to help explain how everything is hooked up together for your use to figure out how to configure and expand for your own internal needs. So just to quickly summarize here, for the components that we provide, again, we provide several components: a briefcase file, Laserfiche forms, process diagram, workflow files, and documentation as well. So before we actually jump into showing the demo here, just want to quickly go over the 4 simple steps on how a user could bring a process into their organization from the Business Process Library. So first, when you find the process you're interested in, all you need to do is click download. This will immediately bring up the process diagram and associated forms into your forms environment. Step 2, you'll also want to import the repository briefcase file. Again, this will bring in the default folder structure, sample document, the metadata field structure as well. This is also where you would download any relevant workflow files and the documentation if relevant. And then step 3, configure the process as necessary for the specifics of your organization. For example, who the tasks need to be routed to, what folders the forms need to be saved in, changing the fields on the forms, text for emails, so on. And lastly, once when everything is configured and tested, it's ready to be deployed for use in your organization. So at this point, to help make everything more concrete here, I'll be passing it over to my colleague Katie, who will more in detail demonstrate the Business Process Library environment and highlight how easy it is to access and configure these process templates.
All right, thank you. Hello everyone, this is Katie from the pre-sales team. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to be looking at today, I'm going to pull up this diagram first. So what we're going to be looking at is we're first going to walk through what these approval processes within the Business Process Library generally look like to your end user, and then we're going to walk through how to configure them. So for our example today, we're going to be taking a look at this travel and expense request process that's available under the Human Resources section of the BPL. So like Brandon was saying, this is delivered primarily through Laserfiche forms, so we're actually looking at the process that's diagrammed in Laserfiche forms here. So as we are walking through these processes, you're going to notice that most of these are actually going to start off with the submission of a Laserfiche form, and then all of the routing to different users who need to participate in this process is going to be assigned based on what that individual enters in the first submission or what subsequent people do within the process. So for example, with this travel and expense request, we're taking a look at someone who in the beginning form is going to note whether they're going to plan their trip themselves or they're going to ask for a travel coordinator to help them out with that. And that will affect the routing in this trip planning in the very center of the process diagram, and then it will move forward for another set of approvals. The other thing that you're going to find is very standard across these different processes that we make available is that we're constantly sending notifications to the different users who need to participate in the process. So each one of these different steps that you see here are accompanied by an email notification or a task in a Laserfiche Forms inbox, and then we move it through the chain of approvals that are required, and then finally archive within our Laserfiche repository so that you can search for content later after the process is actually finished, or even pull back some reporting based on the different events that happen within your system. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. We'll take a look at this. So I'm going to start off first by just giving you a taste of what the actual end user is going to experience in many of these different processes that we're looking at here. So we're going to take a look at this travel request that we have starting with a Laserfiche form submission. So we create these for your users to have a guided feel through the type of information that they actually need to enter for a particular process. So in this case, for travel requests, we'll need some information about the actual employee who's wishing to go on a trip, such as their name, last name, and then some details of their travel. And as we move through this, we're also going to make sure that we're collecting all of the information that is required to actually process this request. So we're marking all of the appropriate fields as required to make sure that, for example, we can't submit this form without detailing what exactly our destination is going to be. So let's go to Chicago, and then of course, we're setting these up to pull in the correct format of input. So for dates, we're adding date fields, and then they can go ahead and detail the purpose of this trip. As we move through here, this is what I was speaking about a little bit earlier is, we guide the users through this process of filling out all the important information that they need. So if they're traveling with other employees, we'll present additional information that's going to be needed for this process. Or based on what they choose, whether they're going to plan the trip themselves or ask a travel coordinator, that will determine the different routing that happens later through the process. So this is what is available, as soon as you download the Business Process Library template, but you can go ahead and tailor this or add fields or add information, and we'll walk you through how to do that in a little bit here. So this is the interface that generally you're going to see to go ahead and kick off any of these processes, simply filling out one of these intuitive, user-friendly Laserfiche forms. For users who are going to be participating later in the process, they'll be receiving some email notifications and have a set of tasks that are delivered through their Laserfiche forms inbox. So right here we can see the first step in this process is supervisor approval, and we've routed it to a Laserfiche forms inbox where individuals can, grab the tasks that are assigned to them and complete them within this particular process. And for each user who's actually routed a task and are asked to participate, they're going to receive a view that's tailored to the role that they have or the type of action that they need to perform. So for example, this supervisor approval, they're not going to be able to edit any of the information that I entered before. Everything's in read-only format, and they simply have options down at the bottom here to approve or reject this request. If we approve this, send this forward, we can see that the next individual, our travel coordinator, has a different role in this process and therefore a completely different view. They have the option to edit some of the content here and are going to be able to detail some of the flight information that for different flights that they book or rentals that are made for this individual traveling or the hotels that they'll be staying at. And then as we move through this process, we'll keep a history tree of everyone who has participated in this particular process and keep our members who are involved up to date with where this exactly sits and who's currently working on it. So this is a view of someone who's actually working in the process, who's assigned a task. Something else that just comes standard with these various processes that we make available to you is some reporting for either supervisors or individuals who are overseeing the process. So because we're mapping all of these Laserfiche processes within forms, we're setting up particular process steps or definitions, and out of the box we're given this dashboard so that administrators or, again, supervisors can monitor where different bottlenecks are within that process, whether tasks are being completed on time, or also monitor the workload of the different individuals in the organization. So right here we can see who all currently has active tasks for travel that needs to be scheduled. Map manager is late on one of them, and we can go ahead and open that up from here, or reassign things as possible or as necessary. We also have that view over here from this user task overview list where we can see what is about to be overdue or what is overdue, and then again pull up those different instances or tasks directly where we can edit due dates or reassign based on the workload of some of those users that we have. So something that just comes with all of these processes here is available as soon as you download them, and then you can, like the rest of this, go ahead and configure it and tailor it to the exact analytics that you'd like to see or stages that you have within your process. And then finally, once this gets all wrapped up and we complete a particular process, we schedule travel, notify our employee, we're archiving everything within our Laserfiche repository so that at a later day you can come back and search for these different entries, be able to provide reports on them. So if we open this up here, we can see an example of that for this travel request. And it's been saved an actual image of the form itself that was originally created into our repository with all that metadata nicely filled out on the right-hand side. So while this is a single process for travel and expense request, it's this general flow of form submission, tasks through your Laserfiche forms inbox, reporting, and then archiving to repository is something that you'll find pretty standard across all these different processes that are available to you. So now that we have a grasp on what the end user is generally going to experience and what these look like, let's go ahead and walk through the actual configuration and how we got to this point. So I'm going to go and open up our Laserfiche Forms interface and show you where you actually access this list of processes and then how you go about configuring them. So for anyone who has Laserfiche Forms and is an administrator within Laserfiche Forms, you'll have access to this pane here where you're able to create new processes within your Forms environment. And when you do so, you can either choose to create something from scratch or pull from this list of available processes from the Business Process Library. So as you're here, we do have a set of right around 60 processes currently published. This will continue to grow and will be updated in live time, as Brandon was mentioning earlier. And in order for you to have an easier way to filter through what exactly you're looking for, we've added these different filter templates over on the left-hand side. So if you want something specific to the government industry, you can filter that, or if you want something specific to a department, you can filter here as well to pull back just those related processes. So we're in an HR department, and let's go ahead and take a look at that travel and expense request process that we had just a moment ago. We can filter by human resources, scroll down through this list, and find that process that we had earlier. Now, before you actually start to download and configure this process, we can open it up and get, at a glance, a summary of what exactly this process entails and what is included with it. So we get a summary of all the participants in this particular process, as well as what the actual process diagram looks like. So we can see that there's a supervisor approval with some back and forth with our employee here if changes need to be made. Then we have the option of planning the trip either via the employee or travel coordinator, followed by a finance director approval, and then archive into the repository. And you can go ahead and preview any of these processes to make sure that before you download, this is something that you're looking for, or you pick the right process out of the list. We also have a view of that Laserfiche form, that front end that we went ahead and filled out earlier. So these are all of the various fields that are available on that initial form. And again, making sure that we're choosing the right template from the list when we get started. Before we download here, I do want to point out one other important resource that's available on this page. So down at the bottom here, we have this travel and expense request repository briefcase. And what this is we know that, even though we are delivering some pre-built processes to you, that the process doesn't live by itself. You're still going to want to connect it to your Laserfiche repository where you can archive different processes that you run or information that's going through your system. So we provide this Laserfiche briefcase here to allow you to do that more easily. When you download this, you can simply upload it into your Laserfiche repository, and that will automatically create the folder structure as well as all of the necessary templates and metadata fields that you need for that particular process. So by uploading this here, it would create, I have it already created, but this Business Process Library folder structure with the particular process that you just downloaded and made available. And then we give you a sample doc here with all of the metadata that you need for this particular process, so it seamlessly archives into your Laserfiche repository at the end of every instance that you run. So after you upload this into the repository, then you can go to the second step of deploying these BPLs and go ahead and download this process that we're working with. So as soon as we download it, we can rename it as necessary, and that's going to launch our process diagram that we were looking at earlier so that we can make a few changes and take this pre-built process and turn it into something that's specific to our particular organization. So again, this is what was shown in that preview that we saw a moment ago, and you have a few different choices as you're actually looking at this and deciding how you want to configure this for your particular organization. If you want to use this as just a template for your process, you could go ahead and add in additional approval steps or information by simply grabbing from this toolbox that we have on the left-hand side and adding tasks to the canvas here in the center. Really easy drag and drop configuration. Or you can keep the process flow just as it is, and the simplest type of configuration for your environment is to simply point these different tasks at the actual individuals within your company that will be performing them. So for supervisor approval, we would open this up and just move through this wizard over on the right-hand side to finish configuring it. So for the actual assignment, it's set up right now just to go through a testing process with an initiator, and we can change this to map manager, our manager in this case. And then for the operations individual who's going to be performing the travel coordination, we can add this individual, and then also for our director, Frank Finance. And it's just as easy as this to go ahead and switch out this template process for the actual individuals who will be performing the work in your company. The other thing that we'll do here is, after assigning the task to the appropriate people, is we'll make sure that this is archiving in the correct repository. So in this Save to Repository task, we'll open this up and make sure that it's actually pointing to your Laserfiche system and your Laserfiche repository. And this is, as we go ahead and log in here, this is where that briefcase becomes important. So once we verify this repository profile, point it to your Laserfiche server, your Laserfiche repository, and give it a login, it's also going to validate that all of those metadata templates and fields that you uploaded in that first step with that briefcase were actually found, and that Laserfiche forms can actually connect to that for a successful archive into your Laserfiche repository. So to check that we have done everything successfully, we can go ahead and save this and then also verify that we are set, that the configuration is complete, and you're ready to start to use this within your organization. So that's the configuration of the process flow itself. The other place where we have some configuration that's available is through, first, these labels that you see at the top here. You might remember that what we call our operational dashboard, or that reporting view that I've had pulled up a few moments ago. Those different stage steps are actually defined by these different stage titles that we have here, so that you can keep track of different types of categories of events within your process. So when either the travel coordinator or the employee is planning the trip, we can see in our dashboard that we have some instances under trip planning. And then when it goes to the financial director for approval, that dashboard is updated with that type of a status. So you have the option to change your reporting here, or to change the actual forms themselves. So I'll go navigate now over to those Laserfiche forms that we have available and show you how to customize what an individual actually sees as they're filling this out. So similar to the process modeler that we saw a moment ago, where you're simply dragging and dropping different activities or things that you'd like to add to the process from that toolbar or toolbox over on the left-hand side, you have the same type of idea here, where we have a set of fields that are available in this toolbox, and we can go ahead and add them to our Laserfiche Forms canvas over on the right. So if, for example, we wanted to allow them to upload some additional information, or some maybe conference pamphlets, or maybe some flights that they had suggested for the travel coordinator under this section, we can add a file upload field by just dragging and dropping from that toolbox, and then go ahead and configure it here in this wizard. So if we wanted these to be supplemental docs, we could go ahead and do that, and it's now available as a part of that initial form that our employee is going to see when they fill this out. So that's how we can actually change up what is available as inputs on those Laserfiche forms. And then the other thing that we can do here is customize how this is actually going to look, and have it match the branding either of your organization or what you want someone to actually experience as they're walking through this. So we'll jump over to the theme section, and these come packaged with just the blue title banner and a white background. But you're most likely going to want to change this to either match your branding or update it a little bit before you actually deploy this. So we have any of these themes available here so that you could change them as needed or change it to the standard theme that you have for your organization. We just added this travel form back in, and now it's ready to go for actually deploying this and pushing this to production so people can actually start to use it. So what we'll do in that case in this final step of deploy is we'll first specify the users that actually need to have access to this form. So it might be the different departments or different sets of groups that are in this organization. So we added the Human Resources Department, Accounts Payable Department, also our legal department, and they now have access to this Laserfiche form as soon as it gets published. Then, final step, we'll make all of these, this process that we downloaded, made a few changes to, gave access, and then we'll actually deploy it, make it live here by simply pressing this publish button. And at this point, this URL that we see here can just be, added to your online portal, or you can email this out to, your employees, letting them know that this new process is available. And this is our Laserfiche form, and the process that we were starting to look at earlier is now up, live, ready to be used. So, that's a quick rundown of what this can look like, how easy it is to go from, having an idea of a process that you might want to automate in Laserfiche all the way to, having something that you can start to utilize and hit the ground running with. So at this point, I'm going to pass it back over to Brandon.
All right, thanks a lot, Katie, for walking us through that demo. At this time, if there are other questions about what Katie just went through, please let us know in the chat box. We can address those at the end. But so to wrap everything up here, just have a couple more slides. So again, as a summary, the BPL includes a number of different processes, and our collection is, again, only going to continue to grow from here. And you can use these processes how you want. You can leave the basic structure as is, add more branches, add more tasks, remove components, use pieces of other processes. These are for your organization to take advantage of. And of course, this main goal here is helping your organization expedite the development of these processes so your teams can really focus more on what your organizations do best. And as the last slide here, for more information on the BPL and how you can get in touch with us, for more details on how on the specific BPL requirements are for your system, we have a short help file guide in the Laserfiche Forms help file guide. So please check that out for more specifics, how to access the BPL. I know there were a number of questions coming through the chat window I was seeing earlier about how to get to the, if you need Laserfiche Forms, you do need Laserfiche Forms to access the Business Process Library, and you also need the current version 10.1 of Laserfiche Forms to access the Business Process Library. And as you're working with the BPL and maybe you notice an error or with a process or have any other general BPL feedback or questions, please let us know in our Business Process Library Answers group. We're really eager to learn how to make this easier for you, how your teams are utilizing the Business Process Library. We can answer any specific process questions as well. And currently we're actually working on the next iteration of the BPL interface, so now is the time to share any feedback you may have. Or also, as you're scrolling through the Business Process Library list, and there's a process you're interested in but don't currently see it there, or maybe you have your own process that you've built out already and you want to share with the Business Process Library team, we'd be happy to receive those submissions and ideas. We've set up a form to collect that input. Also, really cool here, if you submit your idea or built out process through the form we set up, we'll be granting a free CPP code course per organization as well. So we look forward to receiving your ideas and contributions here soon. All right, and with that, that'll conclude our presentation here today. Again, it's a very exciting release for Laserfiche we've had this year. I think it'll bring a lot of value to our users and jumpstart the initial automation efforts. Thank you again for your attention today and attending our overview on the Business Process Library. We'll be happy to address any other feedback or questions at this point. So we'll be going through some of the questions that have been submitted so far. Again, address the few questions that are coming in about requirements, how to access the Business Process Library. You do need Laserfiche Forms 10.1 to access the BPL. Question came in, how many templates are in the Business Process Library right now? We have 60 templates right now, only going to continue to grow from here. See what else we have. Yes, the event is recorded. We'll have the recording available soon after as well. Question here, can you see the list of processes without upgrading first? We have a list of release processes currently in our Business Process Library Answers group. I update that regularly as new processes are released.
There are a couple questions here regarding either, API that's available for external applications, or how would I integrate this with, maybe an accounting system for that particular process that we are looking at. And that's a great place where, these processes provide a really nice template for how the process is going to flow and the general tasks that are going to be required by users. But some of those deeper integrations are a great place to add on to these processes, either, with your own IT staff or in conjunction with your reseller to help add some additional value to some of these templates that we provide out of the box. So as far as integrations goes, that's a great place to, augment or add in some additional resources either through your reseller or, if you have some IT experts in-house that feel like they want to take that on.
See what else we have here. Okay, so we had a question here, where to find the BPL again. Let me quickly demonstrate that really quick. So again, if we are in Laserfiche Forms, you go under the Processes tab here and go under New Process. You have the Business Process Library tab. Select that, and then the full list of our library here is available. You do need to have the admin rights to be able to access the Business Process Library. Yes, I can send out the PowerPoint slide deck. Please shoot me an email, and I'll try to get that get the PowerPoint slide deck to you soon. Okay, it looks like another question about how many templates. 60 templates, and we're still adding more. We're working on, there's a question here, will there be online training for this, or will the CPP suffice? In the next, we're working on new CPP courses. In those courses, it will cover the Business Process Library. Question here, do we get the new processes as you add it, or do we have to do additional steps? There is no additional steps you need to take to access new processes we add to the library. As soon as we review the process internally with team, do a round of customer feedback as well on the process, we submit it to the library and it'll be available for your use.
So every time you open this page that you see right here, this isn't actually looking at anything that's downloaded to your, local form server. This list that is available is actually a live pull from what we currently have published to production. So if in the next 5 minutes Brandon were to go add an additional process to this library, all I would have to do is come back to this page and it would be immediately available to me.
Thanks, Katie. So we've been getting some questions here about specific process asking about specific processes that we might have in the library. If you have any suggestions, there's a suggestion here, do we have any pre-built legal hold processes? If you don't see it in our library right now, please let us know through that Laserfiche form that we set up. That is accessible through our Business Process Library Answers group as well. But legal holds is on our list, and we're looking to have that available.
Okay, there is a question about what's the difference between this process modeler and Laserfiche Workflow, and when would you use one over the other. So in this case, a large, or at least quite a few of the processes that we have here are modeled completely within Laserfiche forms. And that process modeler that we had open a moment ago was how you would like the process to flow through Laserfiche task forms. So if you wanted to add a Laserfiche forms task, that would be the modeler that you would go ahead and update. If you wanted to add in either some additional integrations or some automation within your Laserfiche repository, that's a great place for a Laserfiche workflow engine. That is a separate process modeler that governs activity within the Laserfiche repository, as well as really our platform for many of the integrations that we have with Laserfiche. You can either add in some Laserfiche workflows to a process to help add to them or make them more robust. The Laserfiche Forms engine does have open communication with our Laserfiche workflow engine, so they can pass information back and forth. Or with some of the more complex processes that we actually have available in this library, they do also include Laserfiche workflows, so that just as a part of actually downloading them, you have not only your forms process modeler, which governs the actual forms tasks that show up throughout the process, but then you're also communicating with that workflow engine, which is performing integrations with other systems or automating things within the repository. If we want to take a look at one of these, I believe this out-of-office notification, yes. So this is an example of one where you have a set of Laserfiche forms tasks that are being moved through a process. Someone submits a request for out-of-office notification, and then we actually run a workflow to perform that integration with our Laserfiche, or with our Outlook or Exchange server to set up some calendar invites, set an out-of-office notification status for that user, and do a little bit of integration there. And in that case, that does require a Laserfiche workflow, since it is an integration-based activity, and those workflows are actually included as a part of this library. And they can be downloaded similar to how that briefcase was shown as downloading earlier. And then these would just be uploaded into your Laserfiche workflow engine to get that process up and running.
So we have a question here about the briefcase folder as well. It's asking if it's required or you can link to your own folder structure. We're including the briefcase file there to make this as out of the box as possible. But if you want to use your own repository folder structure and metadata template structure you set up as well, of course you're free to do that. You would just need to configure that save to repository task in your forms process diagram.
And the only difference in the configuration for that particular setup then from what I showed earlier is you just change the folder path. By uploading that briefcase, you still have access to those templates and metadata fields. Those are already going to be configured for you. You just change the folder path to where you'd actually like it to go. There's a question with, does email work with Gmail? Yes. So we can either send emails to different servers, or we can create email items outside of just Outlook. We can create it for Google email if you prefer.
Question here, after uploading the required additional files, are they updated real time with what we add or change? Yes, once when you download the process diagram, the forms, briefcase, the workflows, anything you bring into your environment, you're free to change as you want, and then once you change that, that is updated real time. Another question, if our servers don't have direct access to the internet, is there an alternative way of downloading BPL processes and installing them. We do have an offline mode for the Business Process Library, but you would need to be connected to the internet in the first place. But if you somehow lose connection, you do have a local offline copy stored of the Business Process Library templates.
Oh, there's a question about that initial process we were looking at, and if multiple supervisors can be assigned, or if you can assign the appropriate supervisor based on the employee that initially fills out the form. So in that case, that's where you would utilize one of those small Laserfiche workflows to go ahead and do a sync with your, Active Directory or something of that sort to look up the appropriate supervisor for an employee that that's filling out the form. Alternatively, if you didn't want to use workflow, we also have lookups that are available in any of these Laserfiche forms, and you can just look up to a table that maps employee to supervisor, and then that supervisor assignment option that we saw there can even just be a token or a value that's looked up in the form itself, so that when I enter my name, my supervisor Alan Chan populates in another field, and then Alan Chan's name is the name that actually gets the assignment in that next task. So absolutely doable. A few different ways you can go about it.
Thanks, Katie. Another question, how does the library get populated? Is it up to your clients to take initiative to share, or another method? So we have an internal business process library team. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, it's a cross-functional team with experts across the company, and we're all building these processes out. We receive input directly from our customers as well. So once when we build out a process, we do a feedback session with our own internal team. We meet with customers to go through the process to get feedback as well. And then once when everything looks set, then from my side, our team side, we actually go ahead and submit to the library from there. Yes, if you subscribe to, we had a question here about the Business Process Library Answers group. If you subscribe to it, you'll be automatically notified any updates I put there, or any of our team members put there as well.
There's a question about, do you need a separate workflow server and form server? So if you do have to have workflow installed, if you're utilizing Laserfiche workflows in any of these processes, you do have to have Laserfiche forms installed if you want to access the BPL at all. They can be on separate servers, same server, however you have it configured is not really an issue.
Are there help guides for the BPL is a question that was asked. If you check out the Laserfiche Forms help guide, we do have a BPL section in there on specific requirements, some other configuration things that you might need to do. But for the most part, if you go to the BPL interface page in Forms, we provide the process flow, details, participants, additional considerations. And for the more complex ones, we provide documentation as well. If those materials that we have right now aren't sufficient, please let us know, and we'll work on providing more information here in the future.
There's a question here about uploading receipts for that expense process. So in that case, that would be a secondary process that you would want to kick off for the actual, this is to approve the ability to even go on a trip. I believe there is another process in this library for actually submitting those receipts. We can check on that for you, but that would be a secondary process, or a great reason to add on to this process. So, if it is approved, put a little timer in there to wait for that actual travel date, and then start collecting receipts as a secondary task. There's a question about integrating with CRM for a new account opening process. So in that case, that's, again, another great place to use either our workflow engine or Laserfiche connector to facilitate that integration. If you want to, for example, take the information that you use or that you collect in Laserfiche forms and actually push it to your CRM system to go ahead and, update the accounts for a client or something of that sort, Our workflow engine would be a great way to do that, where you either use some of our ODBC links to go ahead and insert data into that CRM, or use some of our out-of-the-box web services activities within our workflow engine to facilitate that. If you're looking merely to be able to pull up these different forms once they're in the repository from your CRM, so you're looking at, you know, a client profile and you want to just pull up all the files for that client in Laserfiche, we can use Laserfiche Connector for that to perform some image enablement or even to launch some of these forms with information that's displayed there in the CRM. So you have a few different options for integration. It's really dependent upon what exactly you're looking for there and, you know, the resources that you want to dedicate to that.
All right, let's see if we can address a couple more questions here. Question from earlier, when modifying forms, can you edit the titles that are already listed? Yes. Basically, these forms, workflows, process diagrams, they can be edited as you see fit. Nothing is really static here. These are just general templates that you can configure to your own purposes.
If you do want more information about Laserfiche forms or you know, what all it includes or how you might be able to use it in your organization, you can go ahead and reach out to your reseller and they'll be able to walk through that with you, maybe schedule some additional demonstrations to walk through the product and you know, take you through what exactly it offers and the feature set it has.
Okay, so last question here before we sign off. There's a separate section for available templates. Are they related? I'm assuming this is referring to our forms page here. Right now, this is just by default, very simple forms configuration. You can choose from a blank process diagram or just a simple template process where you can submit a form or have a blank or approve a form as well. But if you go to the Business Process Library, this is actually the flushed out process template diagrams. Okay, so that will conclude our presentation here today. Again, thank you everyone for your participation. Got some good questions there. Look forward to everyone's involvement in the Business Process Library from here. Please, again, join the Business Process Library Answers group. Looking forward to feedback and your participation. Thanks again. Take care.